Hello, everyone. Welcome to. I'm not actually going to call it the Daily Sib anymore. I think that ship has sailed, but very much more branded under Purple Goat now. I'm really pleased to be joined by my teammates of Purple Goat, Chris and Harriet, and we're going to be having a bit of a chat about Purple Goat and also kind of focusing on our topic of the week or the fortnight, maybe, which is media representation. So I thought before we get stuck into the meat of the conversation, it'd be great for you both just to sort of introduce yourselves. I know, Harriet, you've not been live with me before, but also even from your side, Chris, both of you can give a bit of an update of some of the things you've been working on at Purple Goat and how it's going in general. So, Chris, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, hi. You guys have mostly seen me before. I'm Chris. I'm the campaign manager for Purple Goat. I'm basically running the campaigns. I'm the one at the coalface, well, myself and Harriet. And we've been running all manner of marketing campaigns, from creating content for companies for their own platforms to spreading awareness and sentiment of brands, and all the while following our Purple Goat mission of increasing representation of the disabled community as a whole in marketing.
Which we will maybe not purely on marketing, but that representation word, we'll come back to that in a minute under media. That's good framing of what's to come. But yeah, Harriet, big public welcome obviously to the team and to live streams. But yeah, it'd be just great to share a bit about you.
Yeah, okay. I'm very honoured to be here on your Daily Sib. That's now Purple Goat Sib. But I'm Harriet. I've recently joined the team, so we're joined in September. And we always say it feels like a lifetime because we've just had so much going on. It's always very exciting though. So I'm campaign executive, get involved in both sides. So myself with Martin, I work alongside with him in meetings, different conversations every day, and with Chris on the campaign side. So it's just so nice to see a lot of brands coming on board, and it's nice to also be part of the selection of influencers, because that's obviously the whole part of the push that we're trying to do, is representation of the disability community. So giving people work and campaigns is just makes you feel very warm inside, and it's really exciting to be part of this journey, and it's a very exciting one every day. We've all laugh on a Friday because of how tired and crazy the whole week has been, so it's really good. It's really interesting to be live as well. It's very new for me, so it's very nervous. Very nervous.
Great.
It's very exciting, and the topic is very relevant and important to us. So I'm keen to share our ideas and news and stuff.
Yeah, well, that point you made about how come Friday we're pretty spent, and equally how passionate we are for what we're doing and the difference it makes. I think obviously I've not really been able to do as many of these live streams because of how busy we've all been behind the scenes. So I think it's good for the viewers to sort of get that little update of what we've all been sort of doing, and that we're not all sat with the feet up on the Costa del Sol, but we've been plugging away behind the scenes. And I think we've really seen the last few weeks a real sort of shift again. Like we sort of have growth spurts, I think, and I think the last couple of weeks, all that hard work we've been putting in on a number of levels is really we're seeing that progress. So there's definitely going to be lots of new and interesting updates coming in the next few weeks that will be exciting to share. So I think that point around representation and in media, I mean, obviously with where we are in the marketing sense of media, sort of Instagram, YouTube, social media, it is a part of that narrative. And I think it's probably fair to just make that broader point that, media can also be sort of TV and films, and it can then go a bit not separate from marketing, but it's sort of maybe a couple of facets of the media side. But I think one way we can just start the conversation is obviously the number of disabled people. We're looking at 1.3 billion globally, where we are in the UK, 14 million. So whether it's about what's on BBC soaps or Netflix, or who's involved in advertising and marketing, there's always been this distinct lack of representation of disabled people. And of course, we're very aware and keen to talk about diversity and inclusion. We're not coming at it, we only want disability. I think we stand for, inclusion, diversity of all groups that have been marginalized over many years. But obviously our, wheelhouse, our focus is disability. We know that in advertising, 0.06% of adverts have disabled people, compared to 22% of the population. So I just wanted to sort of frame, there's a lot of people with a disability, and we all love and know media in its many forms. And so now we frame that problem, if you like, that issue of representation. I'll come to you first, Chris. Like, why for you is representation important for you, both personally and professionally? I'll just give a few thoughts you've got. Just what is representation for you? Why is it important?
I think on a personal level, you want to see your own experience reflected in all forms of media, to feel included in society as a general thing. And, when I was younger, it was segregation, and you didn't see disabled adults out in public. You didn't see them on TV other than played by able-bodied people. You never saw them in advertising.
No.
And so you automatically are already slightly excluded from society.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, from a professional level, it just makes business sense. It's 20% of the population that brands just aren't talking to, not in any kind of meaningful way yet,
Yeah, I mean, a whole other topic we can do another day, I'm sure, around, say, employment as well, is that, it's representation in all walks, all forms of life. Because if you've got, is it 7 billion global population roughly now?
Yes.
You should have all disabilities, race, gender, etc., in employment, access to goods and services, media in terms of like TV and film, and more and more and more. So in the end, it's the right thing to do, it's the legal thing to do. But as you just said at the end there's the business case, actually, that the businesses can benefit when they are more inclusive to all people as well.
Yeah.
Harriet, your perspective is a bit different from mine, and Chris, you don't identify as having a disability. And I think, for me and Purple Goat, it's vital we have that diversity, in terms of that sort of disability and not disability in the team, for a whole host of reasons. But for you, it's been an interesting few weeks getting to know me and Chris, let alone the bigger picture. It'd be great just to share your feelings and experiences of that perspective as well.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it's very much, like you said, that the different perspective. However, I do see the bigger picture. So, for example, before I started at Purple Goat, it's very much like an awareness. It's not in the media. Like, the community is not showcased in the media in terms of representation levels. But to me, it was very interesting from day one. The actual statistical facts they blew my mind, to be honest, because it's very much an awareness of, that the statistics is going to be quite high, that the representation in media is going to be lower than mainstream, but to the level that it is just, it's really shocking. And it's so interesting. Each day we obviously have our conversations, meetings and talks, and we sometimes, talk about the things that are personal to you two and things that you've come across to help me learn. The interesting topics about language, huge. Like, I've learned so much already. The differences within disabilities and the differences of how people are identifying what problems they have and the barriers. It's a whole host of things that has definitely broadened my knowledge of the disability community in general, really. But then plus what Chris just said in terms of it's a business case. It's not just, you can't just speak to a community and not ask them the questions. Like, everyone wants to be spoken to as a consumer, and it's being missed so much, and it's such a lot of money that is being missed and not accessed or not talked to and about. And what the community wants and needs is like completely different than what brands believe. And it's very scary when you're speaking to brands, the fear that they have.
Yeah.
To me, it's not okay. It's like how we always say to people, like, please be comfortable to ask us questions, because that is the only way you're going to learn, and like the world is only going to change to be inclusive.
Yeah.
So it's to me, it's still every day I'm learning something about the community, and also I appreciate and kind of like identify in terms of I understand the issues and want to help, in that I've got a huge passion for it, and the influencers that we speak to now, I feel like I can help them, and I'm trying to like push this huge representation out there, because there's not enough of it, and it's very scary, to be honest. Very scary.
It certainly surprises people that the number of disabled people is bigger as a community number or a market size from a business perspective than a lot of people realize, and then that percentage in representation terms is a lot lower, certainly, than other sort of minority or protected groups that are generally being spoken about. One thing I was just going to add from my side, of like just on a personal level, what I think the importance is around role models. I sort of think, like as Chris was referring to, when we were growing up, there wasn't a lot of disabled people on TV or in adverts, and I think that like the damage of that is what message that sends to other disabled people. It's like you're not acknowledged, you're not seen, you're not heard, and I think that's a really positive as we try and we are getting more progress with engagement and representation. I think that side of it is good. I think the point you just mentioned about fear, if we're looking at why is there underrepresentation, why are brands not as engaging as they could be, I think they're more aware of the data and the opportunity than 10 years ago, say. But it's fear. I think absolutely what you said, Harriet, is that. I mean, Chris, have you got any sort of thoughts or just experiences of, the more we've been doing Purple Goat, where that fear comes from? Have you got any thoughts on why there's such a fear about disability?
I don't think it's like active avoidance. I think it's the fact they all know that this is something that needs doing.
Yeah.
I just think it's not knowing the correct language or how it's going to be, how a particular message is going to be received in the community. It creates that fear, and instead of addressing it, they just avoid instead and direct their diversity and inclusion elsewhere.
Yeah, and that's fundamentally what with all these months since we launched in April are overcoming, is that, okay, rather than sort of put your head in the sand or run the other way, we can help to overcome that. Well, the fear is of one part, but it's a risk. I think they worry there's a risk.
Absolutely, it's going to be received wrong, and it's going to ruin the sentiment of their brand and that kind of thing. So that there's a whole host of a cluster of fears around the subject that it's just seen as too much of a risk. And I mean, that's exactly what we're trying to do here at Purple Goat, is try and negate all those factors for them and help them communicate better.
I was going to say as well, I think for me, during the conversations that we've had with brands, clients, like different companies, I think there's a fear, which is, we all know there's a fear, and it's because of the risk and how it's going to identify within the community, and if it's going to go wrong, if it's going to go right. But sometimes I feel like the fear comes from a good place, because people don't want to offend, but which is absolutely fine. But then I think it's going to the next step of this. You don't want to offend, but then it's like you're almost, by not offending, by not asking questions, by not addressing it, you're then almost coming across as ignorant, because when you're just doing it in-house and then nobody else knows about it, and it's not expressed within the community or the wider world. So it's not just this advert needs to include a disabled person for the disabled community. It's not just that. It's for the bigger picture of anybody watching it. It's just normal life. Like, everybody is on the same planet. Everybody's from the same, everybody belongs within the same world. So it makes something awkward out of nothing. So that, I think that's where what I've noticed a lot is it comes from a good place, but then it lacks in addressing and asking questions, and then it turns into an ignorant thing, and then it gets put back to the back of the people's minds because it's too risky now. I can't do it.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely there's not like a malice or a horrible nature to any person or brand deciding to overtly discriminate against it. It's none of that. It is, as you say, a sort of in not knowing how to engage and conduct themselves, then the sort of consequence, it can look ignorant and look bad, but it's that confidence and having the tools, which, you know, that's what we're I think bringing part of that solution. Chris is saying, are the brands keen to engage? I mean, we've sort of been talking around this for the last couple of minutes anyway, but I think the answer is yes. Like, once they realize the numbers, back to what we were saying earlier, the opportunity, but also more like we just said, the solutions and the strategies and the tools, then I think, yes, they are very keen to engage. And it's a journey. You know, I think I was giving a talk the other day that, you know, whether it's, I think it was on Saturday, I gave the talk through the British Embassy in Russia, and it was all about tourism. But it was the point that whether it's a business, a country, the world, or even an individual, it's sort of an inclusion journey. And we're all, like, even Chris and I are learning more every day about other kind, you know, the lived experience of other kind of disabilities ourselves. So I think we have to maybe not have it as a binary sort of a destination when you're there or you're not. It's actually that, you know, we all improve a bit every day towards that, just by educating and learning and trying new things. And I think the brands are very open to that conversation and sort of making those inroads gradually. We've got another question just coming from Kevin. I'll just bring that up. Business opportunities aside, how important do you think it is to educate kids? Growing up in the 90s, it seemed to be a very much a them and us, zero mixing or even speaking of the subject at school. Chris, do you want to, I know sort of your education experience was different from mine in terms of inclusive education or not, but maybe you could just kick that answer off for Kevin.
I mean, absolutely. In a nutshell, it's crucial. I think from my perspective, it was segregated education. I wasn't integrated with my local community because I had to travel halfway across the county to get to a special school. So I led two different lives. My local community, just lots of prejudice, that kind of thing. And as soon as they started to integrate schools and kids grew up knowing other disabled kids, seeing them in day-to-day circumstances, having them as peers in the classroom and stuff, attitudes began to make a tiny adjustment. And it's seeing us out there in business, seeing us out there in relationships. It's all about education. And if it was taught to kids in school, then, you know, as part of social sciences or whatever, you know, attitudes could be adjusted at such an early level, you know, it would have a huge impact.
Yeah, I agree.
What was your experience growing up at school and disability?
Myself.
Yes, yeah, well, yeah, just from your personal experience.
I would say as well, just to touch on, should children like be exposed and like to everything basically? And kids are brand new; they don't have, and they aren't born with prejudice. Or they pick up on a lot of, well, they learn from people around, attitudes around, different like morals that people introduce to them. So it's so important because that's like that's the new generation of start. Like that's where they don't have any prejudice. So they create it by people are the weirdest thing in the world, aren't they? People's views are so different and vast wherever you go. So they pick up from all of that awkwardness or people's lack of education around certain topics. So it is really interesting. In my school, it was a very, you know, mainstream high school, primary school within my community. But our schools are very diverse, different backgrounds, ethnicities, people with disabilities in the school. I mean, it was very, like, it was a norm. Like, it wasn't anything that people were awkward or rude or ignorant about. So I think, I've been brought up within with no prejudice or anything like that. So I think it's better, because then when you learn about it, like how we have conversations, I already have a perspective that you believe that is, like I'd like to think I was like an all round, and then you can kind of speak from different perspectives. But when you actually hear different situations, like the school that Chris went to, it's like very eye opening as well. Like then to be how far behind the world was, like once upon a time, and how far forward we are now, but there's still a lot to go.
It's that point about the journey as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
That it,
Yeah.
it got better, and there's still more to do. And I mean, interesting, you sort of said there were disabled people at your school, and there wasn't like a thing. It wasn't any kind of negativity going on, seemingly. So it's interesting then why after school we still end up with the difficulties around employment, media representation, access to transport, all this. If the schools, and because obviously following on from Chris's point, I did go to a school where it was the primary school was basically, I would say, the only disabled in the village, because I basically was. So it was only non-disabled friends. But then at secondary, I did have to go further away because the local school wasn't set up, the environment wasn't wheelchair accessible. But in that other school, there were disabled students and non-disabled students, and I sort of felt I had the best of both worlds. So yeah, I think definitely things have improved, but it's interesting why that educational bit that sounds better hasn't led to more full representation or full inclusion in the more sort of adult settings, if you like, the work and all the rest of it. Chris, I know when we were doing some sort of talking points about what we might discuss today, obviously media being one of the core focus, there was a film you wanted to mention, wasn't there?
There was. I just wanted to go back to your experience at senior school first, though. I mean, how was your experience there within the school? Was there integration, or was it ghettoization within the secondary school?
No, it was definitely. I had friends in class that all were not disabled, and then I had the benefit of like wheelchair hockey or wheelchair football that I couldn't do maybe in the PE sense with the rest of my year group.
Yeah.
So that's really, for me, it wasn't ghettoized. It was the best of both worlds, really.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, Harriet, carry on.
No, I was just saying that's good, because because obviously times do change, and it is interesting to see at that stage what the developments are, and like what it'd be interesting to go into schools now and see what the developments are and how integrated things are accessible, include, like rather than exclude, you go into that room, it's like very set. So it'd be very interesting to see what it's like nowadays as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So to your Barry Norman film review with Chris Cusack.
Absolutely. I'm anxious for this not to end up being a film review, but I watched The Greatest Showman at the weekend. Now, I'd heard a lot about the film, and some friends had recommended it, and I kind of went into it with a lot of skepticism. I think I kind of had pre-decided I wasn't going to like it, because the whole freak show aspect was not a particularly great time in the history of the disabled community. There's a huge amount of exploitation. I mean, shame, and that the families would feel, and they would be marginalized and hidden away and things like that. But I kind of must admit that the film gave me a different perspective. I mean, I'm not sure how historically accurate the film was. We all know what Hollywood is like. I could see how it would create a sense of community for like the first time amongst disabled people by putting them all in one place and not hiding them away. But I mean, it's look at me for negative reasons. It's look at this unusual freak, basically. So that aspect I still hate. I can see how the people that took part in it gave them employment, because that was almost never heard of in those days. A sense of purpose, and an exchange of ideas and views, and a community that understood, I think. So it's weird how the film has kind of changed my mind.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because, in a sense, I think the points you made, the positives about employment, I guess, therefore financial independence, the community, the friendship, all those things are definitely there and really positive and really rich. And then it's a question of, is having the world know disabled people, or the sort of like the people in that film, those characters, that they exist, as in they're represented, like we're talking about today. But then if the narrative is a bit, like, say, kind of freak show, would it have been better not to have done? It's quite a tricky question, isn't it? Like, is it progress, or was it just pure negative representation?
You could argue, I suppose, that the attitude was already there. When disabled people were seen in public, it was, people would scream and run away, or, shy away, thinking it was a contagious illness or whatever. And to get past that, you'd say, here I am. This is, the freak that you've all been looking at already. He just put them all on stage and made some money out of it.
I feel like you're about to burst into one of the songs. Harriet, have you seen the film, Harriet?
I love the film in terms of, like towards the end where, like you said, the stand up, this is me, doesn't really matter what anybody thinks, and we are we determine our own destiny. I understand all of that, but yeah, like it is interesting. Even when you were talking about it after watching it, it is also that, is it good or is it bad? Because you're saying something like it's the freak show kind of circus that people come and pay a ticket for. So that's a bit awkward, weird, odd. Don't know how I feel about that. But then you actually see on the flip side, people weren't out in public, people weren't represented. They got employment, they got paid. It's just a really weird crossover. But I like the end of the celebration. But it's very back in the day. You can tell, like, it's a very attitude set.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely.
It's on its time, isn't it?
Yeah.
He wasn't running a charity in the end of, at the end of the day. It had some positive outcomes, but he was out to make cash out of it. But at the beginning of any integration process, you have to be seen. And it was the most striking way to get our community seen, I suppose.
Yeah, that's true. All right, we're getting a bit near the end of the live stream, but I suppose I was thinking how to end it, and I was thinking more like from some of the things we've done at Purple Goat, with some of the influencer campaigns. Is there, I'm putting you a bit on the spot because I know you haven't prepped for this, but not knowing one or two clients that we can't name because of contractual reasons as well, but just a couple of one or two things that you've been involved in where we've helped at Purple Goat to get disabled people represented on social media with brands or businesses that you're kind of proud of. I think that's kind of where I'm coming from, and sort of take your example where you see fit. But Chris, is there one or two things looking back already in the 6 months we've been going that you think, we did something really good there by doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a couple of fitness platforms that we helped out, and
I think we can name them, can't we? I think we're allowed to name them.
Yeah, there's Unlimited UFit and an American platform called Kakana.
Yeah,
and they both do streaming workouts and have a community-based fitness focus. But it's again interesting representation. Is we're a health conscious bunch, the same as any other section of the community, but it's such an underserved area because gymnasiums are struggling to get accessible. Other streaming services don't have any modifications for people with disabilities. I'm really proud that we got some fantastic disabled influencers with a real passion for fitness involved with these brands.
Yeah, it's funny you say we're all health conscious. I basically have loved that I could always blame a lack of inclusive fitness for not doing anything, and that's taken my excuse away now. So I'm going to have to start getting more active as all this stuff happens.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, jokes aside, you're right. Like to bring an industry that really, really isn't thought of with disability, that sort of fitness sounds a bit, that we. And I think that's another thing about media, not about disability, but in general, when it portrays that perfect body and the abs and all that sort of stuff. I mean, disabled or not disabled, it's not a particularly attainable goal for a lot of people. So I think that there's even a wider conversation about the sort of messages and representation in that context as well. But no, I think because of those sort of stereotypes, it's great we've been able to break through and help those brands to connect with disabled people, to to understand you can be healthy and well doing certain types of movement and exercises, and you don't have to go outside and lift the car on Instagram kind of thing.
Just acknowledging that the disabled community is incredibly diverse, and that there's not a one size fits all inclusion policy. So you have to speak to all different areas of the disabled community to be completely inclusive.
Yeah. And Harriet, any particular moments or projects?
I agree in terms of the two fitness platforms, because I think now because of the pandemic and everything's gone a bit more remote / from home, I think it is just opening the horizons of what can actually be achieved when you're at home, which is now what a lot of people are realizing, that like for the disability community, the shielding, the whole shielding stage that you guys have had to experience, and when you've been you're not being able to go out because of health reasons or just to protect yourselves, people are now actually getting an experience of that by being at home or in lockdown. So I feel like a lot of brands are tweaking what they do to make sure they are diverse and make sure they do include a lot of people. And it's nice to see a lot of people and brands like beauty brands and skincare, health, and just the whole wide just adapting, because they finally realized there's a market there, and you have to provide to everybody. You can't just provide to a certain amount of people and expect that's enough. Every community counts. It doesn't matter. So I think it's just been overall everything. Each day I'm happy with accomplishments that we achieve, and people the influencers content is so authentic and real, and the stories that they share.
Yeah.
They're all really hungry to be connected, or there is a big community of disabled influencers out there just waiting for work and needing these connections. So we need businesses to step up, which they are doing, which is fantastic.
I guess in the end that there are particular influencers and particular campaigns and particular moments that are great, but actually it's that creating economic opportunity for disabled talent. It's helping brands get rid of the fear. And I think when you were just saying a minute ago, Harriet, I remember reading about green marketing. And so there was a point where it was a real hardcore few group of customers that demanded all products were sort of eco-friendly. And now, I mean, any brand that isn't eco-friendly and sustainable, they're going to lose mainstream market share because it's come more, it's like a trend in a sense. And I feel like that with disability and inclusion, that there's the market of disabled consumers, which is worth $8 trillion globally. But I think in the end, the non-disabled world is waking up to the injustice, and they're only going to want to buy from businesses that include all people. And I think that's going to be another lever that we'll see that changing over time as well. So a lot of things to do, a lot of good work going on, a lot of nice moments at the same time. And as we say, we're certainly sleeping well.
Like babies. No, it's very nice to see. It's very nice to be part of as well. And I think everybody now more than ever experiencing how important equality is. Like that, I know it's always been a tone that everybody's spoke about, or certain groups or protests at each time, but I think now more than ever since COVID potentially, but I think bubbling away in the background is so important in diversity and inclusion and all of these key words. But it's becoming the normal life because it is the real world. Like it is a representation of the real world. So it is really interesting to see how fast everybody's jumping on board, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Any final thoughts, Chris?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything. I mean, we definitely had some fantastic campaigns with some great responses and really good engagement. So really just any businesses out there that have these concerns and fears, you know, find our website and get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Good call to action. And here is Chris to sing us out with This Is Me.
That's not going to happen.
No, seriously, everyone for watching on the live. Thanks for joining live. And we had the few questions we had come in. Often these get quite a lot of views afterwards. So if you're watching it later in the day, still feel free to write comments and we'll look on through the day and tomorrow to answer any other questions that you've got. I think I've sort of learned the lesson that we're not going to try and say it's going to be live every particular day at particular time because our schedules have just been bonkers. But I think this was really nice just to give you, the audience, a bit more of an update, Purple Goat. But I think also to speak about these bigger themes and issues really for the disabled community. It's just all about raising awareness, to be honest. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and we will be back again sometime soon. Take care for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.